When didn't you go to school? Doesn't Anna like Kevin? Don't they eat cheese in the mornings? Questions, questions, questions. And this video is about negative questions. When do we use negative questions? Let's dive in. Before we look at some examples, here is the usage. When do we use negative questions? Negative questions are used when something is not quite clear and you want to be absolutely sure. You can use them, for example, to ask for information, to make a suggestion, or to express surprise. Don't you like cheese? Here is the structure. How do you form negative questions? It's not very difficult. Negative questions are formed with a negative auxiliary verb. That's almost everything you need to know. Not completely, but here are some examples. We have a negative auxiliary, we have the subject. Very often we have got a full verb, and in most cases there is a rest, like a time or a place, adverbial, for example. Isn't Tom dancing with Mona? Aren't the girls writing a test? You always want to make sure by asking these kind of questions. Can't Lucy visit Alex? Hasn't Hannah called Daniel? And another negative auxiliary is don't, for example. Don't you like cheese? I always thought you would. And in the past tense, it's didn't they stay at home? Because I saw them at the party, for example. So there is very often a negative auxiliary. Maybe a modal verb, can't, wouldn't, or a form of to be, isn't, aren't, or didn't, or don't, or in the present perfect tense, hasn't, haven't, and so on. Another structure. If you want to use a question word, well, it's not very hard to tell where it's placed. Place it at the beginning of the sentence. The structure is the same, except that there is a question word at the beginning. Question word, negative auxiliary, subject, full verb, rest. For example, why isn't she staying at home? She isn't allowed to go out, and I saw her somewhere. What can't you understand? I spoke slowly and clearly. Who doesn't Steffi like? Hard question. I don't know. But I want to make sure, make a suggestion, want to get some information. And there is one more thing. Perhaps you've noticed that there can be a difference when the verb is a form of to be. And here we go. This is how you form negative questions with the verb be as a full verb. Examples. The structure is the same. And there are cases when there is a question word, and there are questions when you don't need a question word. Isn't Lena at the party? Aren't you his friend? Then a sentence with a question word. Why wasn't it okay for you? What isn't nice? And that's a subject question. The subject is the question word. Wer oder was? What? Summary. This video was about negative questions. You often use negative questions to make a suggestion, to get some information, to ask, to be absolutely sure if the information you heard is right, to make something clear, to confirm something. And the structure is always the same. There is a negative auxiliary, like isn't, aren't, don't, hasn't, wouldn't, can't, and so on. Subject, and then there is very often the full verb and some kind of rest. If there is a question word, it's naturally at the beginning of the sentence. And there is a difference when the verb to be is the full verb, as it's at the beginning, except if there is a question word and there is no other verb in the sentence. Das war's zum Video verneinte Fragen. Nicht besonders schwer, oder? Wenn es dir gefallen hat, Daumen hoch. Wenn du sagst, schwierig, wusste ich schon alles, Daumen nach unten. Ansonsten sage ich es allen weiter. Ich freue mich über jedes Like. Wenn du Fragen hast zu diesem Thema oder zu einem anderen, lass gerne einen Kommentar da, einen vernünftigen. Dann beantworte ich ihn auch sehr gerne. Ansonsten freue ich mich am meisten über ein Abo des Kanals. Verpass nichts mehr und mach die Glocke an. Ansonsten findest du natürlich auch Übungen hier zu diesem Thema auf www.grammarbox.de. Noch mehr Übungen im English Grammar Workbook. Ansonsten danke fürs Zusehen. Bis zum nächsten Mal und ciao for now.